In chapter 2, Father Dubay explains that this book is certainly radical. It has a very radical, challenging message. In fact, I would say that this book is one of the most challenging spiritual works I've ever read. But he goes on to say that that doesn't mean it's complicated. The message is actually very simple. But that simplicity is masked by the fact that there's a lot of confusion around the topic. And so, first of all, he just lists the sort of basic questions that people might find occurring to them as they start to consider this call to voluntary gospel poverty. And the first set of questions are around the very basic idea of what is gospel poverty? What is this thing? And people might wonder, is this destitution, a lack of basic necessities of life? Or is it just a mere detachment, something purely internal, where, even if you had three homes or private jet, so long as you were detached from those things and didn't let them have a hold over you, that's fine? Is it about just being moderate, just living at a moderate level? And if so, what would be the standard for moderation? Is it the average first world way of life, the global standard? What would constitute moderation? Is it maybe just about being available to God and to other people? Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with a voluntary poverty at all. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with our material goods at all, because you sometimes hear people say that being available is sufficient. Is it about bargain hunting, about being thrifty and frugal, about always getting the best deal and being careful not to spend unnecessary money? Is it simply about sharing with others? And if it is about sharing with others, how much do we have to share? Does it entail a lack of security, being vulnerable to downturns or never knowing where your next meal is going to come from? And if it does entail vulnerability, then how could the laity embrace it, especially families who have children to take care of? Or is it just merely symbolic? And then, as well as those practical questions, he says there's theoretical questions. For instance, could the meaning of gospel poverty have changed over time? If the church and the saints said one thing about it 1,000 years ago, could they say a different thing now? Could any of the teachings change over time? And if God's creation is good, why would we have to give it up? I mean, the Bible starts out with God saying, He's made the world, this is good. This is a good thing. So, where does poverty fit in with that goodness of creation? And what does this talk of voluntary poverty have to do with the millions of people who are in unchosen poverty? Millions of people who don't have sufficient food, can't find jobs, don't have secure homes. What relationship does the gospel value have to their lives? And if gospel poverty is indeed such an important part of the Christian message, as Father Dubay is saying it is, why are so few Christians embracing it? What do we see when we look around us? Are most Christians that we know here in the first world embracing voluntary poverty? And then there's practical questions. How could parents of families be expected to practice voluntary poverty? Doesn't that conflict with the care of children? Without a supportive community, since most Christians are not practicing voluntary poverty, we don't have a supportive community that believes in this. Can we really fully live voluntary poverty without such a community? And I think that's one of the most important questions Father Dubay is asking here, because it does seem that in anything in the Christian life, going it alone without a community is very difficult, if not nearly impossible. And how could we ever expect to get the members of an affluent society to embrace this gospel ideal? Could the church, or should the church, mandate such poverty, if at least for clergy and religious? So there's all these questions, and it might seem that it's just about impossible to find any answers to these questions. How would we begin finding the truth about these things? But we have to find the truth and come to an agreement on it because Jesus calls us to be completely one in John 17:23. And St. Paul insists that the faithful should be in perfect agreement of a common mind. In the next chapter, Father Dubé will lay out a set of criteria for finding the right answers to these questions.